At the top of today, we heard from Larry Rigdon, and he basically said if you're not in survival mode for this year and next year, basically you're not going to be in business much beyond that. That puts your paper in a very interesting light. You spoke about maintenance strategies fit for evolving and transitioning technology, but not only do you need maintenance strategies that meet that objective, but they have to be commercially sensible as well.
Yeah, of course they do. But I mean, as a vessel operator stroke manager, we're in slightly different position to people like Tidewater. The asset doesn't disappear from our perspective. Either we are working for the lenders or we're working for the operators. But come what may, we are driven by cost. And whether that efficiency comes through programs that we put in place or decisions we make, we are always driven by that. So we are typically always in survival mode. We don't see upsides, we don't see downsides. We always see cost pressure from our clients. So whilst people like Tidewater are looking for the good times to support their balance sheet and support their bottom line, we don't have that aspect to it. We're a cash flow business.
So getting into the detail, how have you built a management framework to cope with evolving technology?
Well, I think what I described today was the fact that we have only just started the process. And I think that is further than many other organizations. The first part of any solution is to recognize you have a problem. And as I say, I can see this technology coming down the tracks at us at an alarming rate. And if we look at the way we've changed over the last 50 years, 100 years, simply stated, we haven't. Yet we're about to stay relevant. We have to do something different. And there are huge risks, actually, in making that change, because get it wrong, you become irrelevant. Get it right, then everyone will be happy with you.
How do you guard against the temptation to over-spec?
I think the natural inertia in most organizations, plus the conservatism that engineers typically have, guards against it. For every time I have flights of fancy, I have 10 people in my office who say, hang about. And I think, you know, we used, in ship design, we used to talk about class being the conscious and the brake. Well, in our organization, we have similar people that will say, look, been here, done that, let's just step through the process and make sure we've got it right. By doing that, I think we have a better chance, rather than leaving it to one individual to sort of race off in the wrong direction.
Much is made of predictive risk-based tools, but to what extent are they the emperor's new clothes?
Well, again, in my background, I've grown up with risk-based solutions, so I happen to be a big fan of them. And when I was first asked to start this presentation, I came to the conclusion that that's what the focus of it would be. But then I realized that actually it's the manufacturers who are hijacking that process because they have access to the data. Because I would be reliant on one feedback from one system. They have 100, 200 systems. And then predictive maintenance becomes a reality because they're basing it on a proper sample size. Without that, then I can't do that as an individual. So whilst I would like to be doing more and more, and I can do it in a very primitive, intuitive way, I can't do it sufficiently rigorously that I could say to my engineers, I substitute my process for what you do at the moment, which is breakdown, calendar, and running hours. And quite frankly, at the moment, calendar and running hours have served us very well. And it's difficult to argue that my inventories would be any less at the moment because the sample sizes simply aren't there to do that.
In devising any maintenance strategy, one of the things you have to reckon on is reduced crew, reduced literally in terms of number, but reduced in terms of competence, facing increased pressures, of course, being asked to do more with less. How do you sort of square that circle?
Well, the first thing I would say is I disagree that we're seeing diminishing levels of competence. What we're seeing is a diminishing ability to intervene, and that's quite different. And that's simply because more and more systems are, as I said, black box. Similar to your car, how many of the components in there can you intervene in? You can't. So over time, the engineers will lose a certain amount of their ability, but that doesn't mean they're any less competent. Sorry, and what was the second part of your question?
Basically, I was saying that your challenge in implementing a maintenance strategy fit for evolving and transitioning technology has to take into account reduce numbers, reduce...
Yep. No, yes, indeed. The numbers of people on board, we've already moved to unmanned machinery spaces. We did that a long time ago, and many people thought that was the end of the world as they knew it. We're now talking about unmanned bridges, so we lose a deck watchkeeper there. Many people think that's going to be the end of the world. It probably isn't. So what are we seeing? We're seeing that if we do it slowly enough, people will naturally become comfortable with it. And there are certain sectors of the industry will become comfortable with it far quicker than others. So, and that's what we've seen in the past. So I don't honestly see that is going to be a driving issue in the process, because there is always a turnover of people, and the younger you are coming into it, the more familiar you are with what is the norm.
And finally, you've told us that you're at the beginning of this process. If I scroll forward, or ask you to scroll forward, what does success look like?
Well, yeah, I mean, success for us is obviously that we are still a thriving technical manager and that we are actually relevant in the process. Because what I did say in the presentation was, if you extrapolate one of the scenarios logically, then you're going to see that the vessel manager loses a lot of his ability to take decisions. Now, is that a desirable state? I don't think so. But then again, I have a vested interest in saying that. And I don't honestly know that the manufacturers, the class societies, have actually thought that far down the road, because I think they have got a little toolbox of toys and they're just plugging it together now. They don't quite see where it's all going to lead to. And I think that is the opportunity for us as operators, managers, is to get into that mix and be part of their decision-making process so that we do remain in control and in some respects driving the process, not just allowing them to basically wash over us, which is what some of them want to do.